Trish and her brother were speeding down the highway at 160 miles per hour, but the large truck behind them kept honking incessantly. Derry thought the truck wanted to overtake them, and in a panic, he quickly moved aside to let it pass, but the truck swung from side to side with them, as if it was deliberately playing tricks on them. The siblings were instantly furious. After all, they hadn't had any unpleasant encounters with the truck driver before this. Fortunately, when Derry gradually slowed down, the truck finally distanced itself from them, but Trish and Derry's cheerful mood about going home was ruined. This encounter reminded Trish of the murders that had happened on this highway. The victims were a couple from their school, and the police hadn't even found the bodies, only a blood-stained car on the roadside. When Trish finished, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their backs, knowing that psychopathic killers like to drive big, old, broken-down trucks like this. Originally, it was just a far-fetched joke between the siblings, but not long after they continued driving, they saw that same rusted truck next to an abandoned church on the roadside. To their horror, they saw the bizarrely dressed truck driver loading blood-stained white bags into a pipe. The outlines of the bags looked suspiciously like human bodies. Could this guy really be a murderer? As they were full of doubts, the truck driver stopped what he was doing and stared intently at them. The truck driver's strange behavior made Trish uneasy, so she quickly urged her brother to speed up. Trish then took a phone out of her bag to call the police, but when she looked up again, she saw the truck leaving the church and following them. At this critical moment, her phone ran out of battery. Watching the truck get closer and closer, they became extremely anxious. They had the gas pedal floored but couldn't shake off the truck. The truck was clearly modified. The truck was just a stone's throw away and didn't hesitate to crash into their car. The impact nearly caused them to lose control, and Derry cursed furiously, but the more they reacted, the more excited the truck driver became, ramming them again. Although they couldn't prove the truck driver was a killer, he was undoubtedly a lunatic. After the third collision, the truck accelerated to their side, honking wildly in mockery. The truck driver then slowed down and came up behind the siblings' car to continue hitting them. Realizing they might get killed if this went on, Derry decided to outsmart the driver by steering off the highway, crashing through the guardrail, and driving straight onto the roadside grass. Seeing the truck speed away, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. After quickly fixing the car, the terrified Trish just wanted to get home as soon as possible, but Derry had no intention of leaving. The scene they saw at the church had piqued Derry's interest. If the truck driver was indeed a murderer as they suspected, the person inside those white bags might need help. For safety's sake, Trish thought they should call the police first since they had already been attacked, but Derry disagreed, arguing that if the kidnapped person was still alive, every minute they delayed could mean more danger for them. Under her brother's persuasion, Trish reluctantly agreed. They set off in the car immediately, and it didn't take long for them to reach the abandoned church. Little did they know, they would soon regret this decision. The area around the church was full of crows, exuding a sense of death everywhere, but they failed to see this as a warning sign. Gathering their courage, they slowly approached the dark pipe, and an unpleasant smell hit them. Derry started shouting into the pipe, but there was no response. He then used a flashlight to look inside but saw nothing. However, Derry wasn't ready to give up and decided to crawl into the pipe. Trish tried to stop him, knowing that such reckless actions usually led to bad outcomes in horror movies. Just then, a faint cry for help came from inside. Seeing this, Derry quickly asked his sister to hold his feet so he could get closer and try to communicate with the person, but no matter how he called out, there was no response from the voice they heard earlier. As Trish was about to pull him out, Derry said he saw something moving. Thinking it was the kidnapped person, he was shocked to find it was just a few rats. Derry was startled, and his legs began to struggle frantically. This caused Trish to lose her grip, letting Derry slip down. Fortunately, the drop wasn't too high, and Derry only suffered minor injuries. Knowing her brother was still alive, Trish finally felt some relief, but as soon as Derry stood up, he saw the white bag that had been thrown down. The bag was tightly bound with thick rope, and it was almost certain there was a person inside. Derry cautiously approached and gently kicked the bag with his foot, but there was no response from inside. Just as he was about to call up to his sister, he was suddenly grabbed by the ankle. To his shock, the person inside was still alive, which terrified Derry. After regaining his composure, Derry pulled off the person's mask. It turned out to be a young man, but his face was deathly pale. and his lips were darkened, showing clear signs of severe torture. When Derry removed the white cloth from the man's abdomen, he saw a large stitched-up scar. It looked like the killer had taken an organ and crudely sewed the wound shut. The horrifying sight made Derry's eyes widen in terror. At that moment, the young man seemed like he wanted to say something, but just as Derry leaned in to listen, the young man stopped breathing. It was now clear that the truck driver was a deranged killer, and they had to leave immediately, but climbing back out through the pipe was nearly impossible, so Derry told Trish to go to the road and flag down a car for help, and to shout if she saw the truck driver returning. Derry, meanwhile, took the flashlight and continued exploring, hoping to find another way out. It seemed like this was the basement of the church. What Derry didn't expect was that there were multiple bodies down there, with a table in the middle covered in strange tools. Just then, Derry noticed his shoelace had come undone, but as he bent down to tie it, a drop of some unknown liquid fell on his shoe. He quickly got up and looked up, only to see an incredibly horrifying scene. The ceiling was covered with countless bodies, all turned into macabre specimens by the killer. They all had wounds like the young man's, with organs removed and stitched back up. What horrified Derry even more was that the couple they had been talking about earlier was among the bodies. Meanwhile, Trish, who was outside trying to flag down a car, hadn't seen any vehicles pass by. Finally, she heard the sound of an engine approaching, but when she turned around, she saw it was that same rusted truck. Terrified, Trish forgot her brother's warning and jumped into their car, ready to flee. But as the truck got closer, she realized it wasn't the same one, missing a chance to call for help. As soon as Trish's nerves relaxed, Derry, who had found the exit, suddenly appeared outside the window, startling Trish again. Once she calmed down, Trish noticed something was very wrong with Derry. It seemed that what Derry had seen in the basement had left him extremely terrified. They quickly drove away. On the way, Derry finally gathered himself and told his sister everything he had seen. Before nightfall, they finally arrived at a motel. Just as they were about to get out of the car to call the police, they saw the truck heading toward the church. Sensing something was terribly wrong, Derry and Trish rushed into the motel, telling everyone they needed to call the police. The receptionist, Beverly, didn't know what was going on, but seeing how anxious Derry and Trish were, she went to the counter and made the call. However, as they anxiously awaited the police, the nearby payphone suddenly rang. Derry and Trish stood frozen in place. Trish quickly picked up the phone, and a strange woman's voice came through. The woman knew who they were and what they had just gone through. At first, Derry didn't believe it, until the mysterious woman accurately described the cut on his hand, the hole in his shirt, and the bodies he found in the church basement. Hearing this, Derry was astonished, but what the woman said next sent chills down his spine. The mysterious woman said Derry had left a scent at the church, and the killer had a keen sense of smell. He would follow Derry's scent and relentlessly pursue him, until he turned Derry into one of the specimens in the church basement. On the surface, Derry acted like the woman was talking nonsense, angrily hanging up the phone, but inside, he was panicking. Fortunately, the police arrived at the motel soon after, but they were skeptical of Derry's story. As Derry passionately described what he had seen, Beverly rushed over, telling the siblings their car had been tampered with. They hurried outside to find the car door open and their clothes scattered everywhere. Beverly said she saw a strange man sniffing their clothes with great enjoyment, even smelling Derry's underwear, before heading towards the abandoned church. It turned out the mysterious woman was right. The deranged killer had followed their scent. The evidence was undeniable, and the police had to believe Derry's story. They immediately got up and drove to the abandoned church to investigate, thinking that the psychopathic killer would soon be brought to justice. Derry and Trish finally smiled for the first time in a while, but little did they know, danger was looming ahead. At that moment, the police suddenly heard a noise coming from the roof of the car. Weston, the officer in the passenger seat, had just stuck his head out to check when he was dragged away by something. Even Gideon, the driver, wasn't spared. His severed head was thrown onto Derry and Trish's hood, causing Derry to slam on the brakes. Once the car came to a stop, Derry and Trish carefully got out to check, only to find the police car behind them had been attacked. They also realized the object that fell was Gideon's head. Terrified, Derry and Trish quickly got back into their car. They saw a tall, monstrous figure emerge from the police car, whistling as he slowly approached the severed head, then greedily began to gnaw on it. The horrific scene made Derry and Trish sick, and they sped away as fast as they could. On the way, they passed a cabin and decided to ask the owner for help, to call the police about the terrifying cannibal nearby. However, the cat lady said she feared the police more than any cannibal, She explained that the police would take her many cats away, so she refused to help. As Derry and Trish were about to leave, they noticed the scarecrow in the field had turned into the cannibal. The cat lady, being hot-tempered, grabbed her shotgun and went outside to warn the cannibal to leave her property, or else. When the cannibal didn't move and instead tried to come closer, the cat lady pulled the trigger without hesitation, but the cannibal dodged the shot and instantly darted into the cabin. The next second, the screams of cats could be heard from inside. The cannibal didn't even spare the innocent cats. Enraged, the cat lady ignored Derry and Trish's attempts to stop her and stormed back into the cabin with her shotgun. She was determined to make sure the cannibal wouldn't see the light of day. But after a few piercing gunshots, Derry and Trish naively thought the cat lady had dealt with the cannibal. Instead, they saw the cannibal emerge, holding the barely alive cat lady. Seeing his terrifying face for the first time, Derry and Trish turned and ran back to their car without looking back. As they reversed onto the road, the cannibal jumped onto the hood. Fortunately, Trish reacted quickly, flooring the gas pedal in reverse, throwing the cannibal off the car. But seeing the prey within his grasp, the cannibal began pacing back and forth on the road, seeming to enjoy the hunt. Knowing they couldn't escape easily, the siblings decided to floor the gas pedal and ram the cannibal, ready for a fight to the death. To their shock, the cannibal effortlessly leaped into the air, dodging the collision with ease. Trish attempted a second strike, but the cannibal once again skillfully avoided it. It was then that Derry and Trish realized the cannibal was not human at all. Now there was no way back. Trish could only accelerate again, perhaps overconfident. The cannibal failed to dodge this time and was violently hit. Sent sprawling to the ground, to ensure he was truly down, Trish repeatedly ran over him until his thigh was severed in two. Seeing the cannibal lying motionless, Derry and Trish thought the ordeal was over, but the next second, the cannibal's body began to twitch, and a wing sprouted from his back, flapping wildly. What kind of creature was this? Realizing the cannibal wasn't dead, Derry and Trish hurriedly fled. The car once again sped over the cannibal's body. Soon, they reached the town's police station and told the officers everything that had happened. Just then, a woman entered the station, calling out Derry and Trish's names. It turned out she was the mysterious woman who had called them. Known in town as a famous psychic, Giselle had seen Derry and Trish's ordeal through her visions, prompting her to call and warn them. Although Giselle didn't know where the creeper came from, she knew it couldn't be killed. The creeper emerged every 23 days to feed, and whatever it consumed became part of its body. If it ate limbs, it would grow new limbs. If it ate internal organs, it would grow new internal organs. This meant that no matter how severe the injury, the creeper could heal by eating people. Moreover, once the creeper set its sights on someone's organs, it would relentlessly pursue them until it got what it wanted. Clearly, the creeper had targeted either Derry or Trish. Just as they are talking, the lights in the police station suddenly go out, signaling the arrival of the creeper. A sense of fear quickly enveloped the room. A police officer was counting the inmates in the cells, and everything seemed normal at first until he reached the last cell. Seeing the terrified expressions of two inmates, he noticed a strange creature feasting on another prisoner inside the cell. It was the terrifying creeper. The creeper's severed foot had regenerated by devouring the prisoner's foot. Realizing the danger, the officer immediately opened fire, but the bullets had no effect on the creeper, and the officer was killed instantly. Upon learning of the situation in the basement cells, Sergeant Tubbs led all the officers to provide backup. Meanwhile, Giselle led Derry and Trish to hide, but as the officers reached the stairs, the creeper suddenly emerged from the shadows, brutally ripping out one officer's heart. The remaining officers opened fire, but the creeper vanished in an instant. Upstairs, the trio tried to escape the police station, only to find the exit doors locked due to the power outage. The creeper had followed their scent and was closing in.
No! Get upstairs!
Giselle stepped forward to buy them time to escape, but the creeper showed no interest in her, fixated only on its chosen prey. Meanwhile, Derry and Trish reached an upstairs room, only to find that it was also a dead end. The next second, the creeper burst through the door. With no escape, Derry and Trish were like lambs to the slaughter. The creeper sniffed them both, then licked Trish's cheek. Finding her scent unappealing, the creeper roughly tossed her aside. It was clear that Derry was the target. Just then, Sergeant Tubbs and his team arrived, but the clever creeper used Derry as a shield, preventing the police from taking action. The creeper showed a grotesque, excited expression, its head becoming even more horrifying. To save her brother, Trish begged the creeper to let Derry go. offering herself in exchange for him. But once the creeper had chosen its prey, it wouldn't give up easily. It spread its wings and flew out the window, taking Derry with it. Trish ran out of the police station, screaming her brother's name, but it was all in vain. She could only watch as they disappeared into the darkness. The next day, a devastated Trish walked out of the police station. She saw a crow flying overhead, eventually landing on an abandoned factory. This was the creeper's new lair. As the camera moved inside the factory, the scene revealed the creeper busily at work. Poor Derry paid a heavy price for his reckless actions. The creeper had eaten his eyes and turned him into a specimen, hanging him on the wall.